Hello everybody, welcome back. Carl again. I know it's been a long time since my last update video, but I'm sure you've heard this before. It's been a couple months now since I've done a video, and I thought it fitting to show you my update to my dosing pump. So originally, in the first video of the dosing pump, which I'll link in down below, I made just an Arduino dosing pump with an LCD display, and then 2 pumps. I then added a slave unit here with just 1 pump, and then recently I bought this pump on eBay for like $4. They were just basically giving them away. It was so cheap. So I decided to add a 4th one. And what I did was I made the stand here a little longer. This is just scrap plywood I had laying around. It's kind of glued and nailed it together. No big deal. But anyways, I thought I would show you some of the improvements I'm making. So originally, as you can see on this one, I had the check valve in line here to try to stop this air gap. As you can see here, there's this air that gets in the line. And what I found that it looks like I need to actually put the check valve at the end of the tube to keep the air from coming back up inside. Now a lot of this air here is because I've been playing with this unit like the last 3 days. So every time I fiddle with these little valves, I get water kind of in and out, or excuse me, I get air in and out. So once I get this finally set back up, I'll purge it again and it should be okay. So here you can see I've moved the check valves, and I need to make a wider holder here. So one thing I'll note, when I got this pump, it came with these little fittings here, and these are nice and small, and it fits on this really tiny silicone tubing. And I want to say this tubing is like 1/8 of an inch, like 3 millimeter. So I went to the local fish store and I got lucky. I found these Ginger 4-pack of airline tubing and diffuser, and it says in here mini to mini tubing or standard to mini. Now of course standard airline tubing is this, which is 1/4 inch thick. And when you look at these little fittings here, you can see there's like a smaller barb and then the bigger barb. Well, the smaller barb fits perfect on this silicone line. Also, at the local fish store, I picked up this 3/16 rigid thin wall tubing. And the 1/4 inch airline tubing actually fits right over top of this. And what I do with this is I actually stick this down into the tube as like a dipstick, put a little piece of soft airline tubing into that coupler I bought, these Ginger connectors here, and then that goes into the pump. And then can't see it on this one because I ran out of these connectors, but on this one here you can see it, the fluid here, the rigid dipstick, the little connector, it comes into the pump and then out with again another connector, and then just the regular standard airline tubing out to a check valve, and then this sits in the aquarium. So what I'm going to do is I'll just kind of go through the process. I need to update this one here. I need to take these cable ties off, put my connectors on, the same with this one, and then rerun the line. One other thing I did was, I don't know if I had it in the original video, but there was this button here which turns the LCD light on and off. That hasn't worked very reliably. There's also a lot of corrosion that develops on these parts because it is in the inside of the aquarium stand, so it sees a lot of exposure. And in fact, on the LCD, there's a lot of rust. And I actually made this plate, which is just a whole lot of hot glue, and then the piece of acrylic just pressed down over top to act as a water vapor barrier, because I didn't want water to get inside of there. You can also see there's a little bit of crud buildup around these pumps. So I think if you are doing this, my advice might be to put a little bit of silicone just around the pump before you stick it in, because I did notice a very slight amount of rust on the inside of this pump. Now these pumps are really inexpensive, you know, less than $5. So, you know, it's one of those, maybe it's a disposable part. I think I've had these pumps for almost 3 years and they're still working fine. So I mean, $5 for 3 years isn't a bad deal. Originally I had the IR sensor sticking out, and then unfortunately what happened is the corrosion got to it and ruined it. So I actually just kind of bent the leads, and you can't see it, but there's a hole here, and then I just put the sensor behind it and then put a piece of acrylic again over top of it, just siliconed in place so that the IR sensor will actually hit that from the remote and then make the Arduino work. The other thing I did with the code was I updated it so that you could actually use the remote control to update variables in the EEPROM, and that's actually how you get the dosing information. So I can change the date that it's dosed, the time that it's dosed. I also have it the variable where I can change how many seconds to run it. So the way I have it set up is that about every 1 second of this pump on is 1 milliliter. So if I need 2 milliliters, I just make it 2 seconds. And I'll release the code. It's all open sourced. So that's just one way I can actually tweak this pump without actually getting into it. Because to get into it, to update the code, you have to pull these screws and then get the Arduino board out of there to update the code. So anyways, I'll move forward with updating these connections, and thanks for watching. Alright, so as you can see, all I did was now put my connector on, and I'll just push this on the fitting here. It just stays on there just like that. And that takes care of that one. Now I haven't decided yet, I might actually add little zip ties like I did with these. Alright, so now what I found, if you just drill a 3/16 hole in here, this rigid airline tubing will fit right down inside of there. So now what I do to get the length is to just stick the tube in there kind of at an angle to get it down into this corner, and then just kind of stick it in there, and then grab a marker and just kind of mark where I want it. And I'll pull this out, take a sharp X-Acto knife, and then what you'll do is you'll stick this on here and then just roll back and forth. You'll stick the knife on there and just kind of roll it back and forth. And then as you can see, it'll just kind of break right off, and I just kind of make sure I deburr the end. I don't like to use the side cutters on the rigid tubing because sometimes it can distort the tubing, so I like to make that with the X-Acto knife. Alright, so as you can see now, I have my 4 dosers set up, and let me just pull. Alright, so there goes that. And we'll just pull this tube out here, and we'll put the check valve on it. And what I'm going to do while I have this out, I'm just going to lay the 4 check valves next to each other and get a rough measurement so I know I can make a new connector for it. And we'll just lay that out and figure out about how big I need to make it. So 3 of them is 2 inches, so if I add the 3rd one, I'd say if I make it 3 inches, I'll have sufficient room. And then the closest they can be together is about 3/4 of an inch. So I need 3/4 of an inch in between each one. Alright, so that's it. So what I'll do now is I'll take you over to the aquarium, get it all set up, and I'll show you working. Okay, so I have it now in the aquarium. Let me just plug it in. You're not going to be able to see the screen, but you can put whatever you want on there. I just have that, this is pump 1, pump 2, pump 3, and I just have the last date that it dosed. So that way I can keep track, make sure that they are dosing when they're supposed to. So now what I'm going to do is purge the lines. And of course this goes without saying, make sure you put the other end in the appropriate container. And the way I have it set up, if you push button 3, it'll run pump 3 for just 2 seconds. That just kind of helps get the last little bit out. And then so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you do 5, 6, 7, or 8, it actually runs it for 4 seconds. So it runs it for a lot longer amount of time. Alright, so that one is good and purged. Set that back in the aquarium. And that's it. So now they're all primed, ready to go. I'll go ahead and make a holder, and that'll be it. If you have any questions, guys, please ask them down below, and thanks again for watching.